Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. We are going to jump right into today's video. I'm going to be trying something new here with no music, just a voiceover and the sound of power tools. So if you like this, let me know in the comments below. I picked up this really old desk from Facebook Marketplace for $50. It's way more than I usually spend and way more than I would ever spend on something in this condition. So lesson learned, I won't be doing that again. I began by removing the mirror from the back because my intentions were to split this desk up into two nightstands. After separating the two sides, I removed all of the veneer from the back because it was mostly all peeling. I moved on to using some paint stripper to remove the paint from the top. As I waited for the stripper to do its job, I began removing the decorative wood pieces on the drawer fronts. I did a second coat of stripper to remove the original finish and the paint left on the sides. Without adding anything else, I took some 2/0 steel wool to help remove any leftover paint before scrubbing it down with some super fine 4/0 steel wool with mineral spirits to deactivate the stripper and remove any leftover residue. I sanded the legs using 120 grit with my orbital sander. The reason I decided to remove all of the old paint was because it had not adhered well and looked like a poor paint job, so I didn't want to come across any adhesion issues later on. It was easier to strip the sides of the nightstands the same way I did the top, so that's what I did. After I had one nightstand completely stripped, I came back and started sanding the top first with 120 grit followed by 220. Using DAP premium wood filler, I filled in where the missing veneer was on the sides. There was some spots of veneer that gave me some trouble on the drawer fronts, so I used my heat gun to remove them, and that worked out really well. You may have noticed that I didn't clean this piece at the beginning since I removed the old finish, so I waited for everything to be taken off before cleaning with some TSP substitute. I measured and cut wood trim that I will later adhere to the drawer fronts. I used the scrap wood to help me get all of the pieces to measure the exact same size. I attached them using some liquid nails, all except for one of the drawers because it was broken. I fixed the crack with some wood glue and a clamp. While I waited on that to dry, I moved on to adding this small piece of wood that was originally attached to the mirror to help fill in the gap that was left from when I removed it. To finish fixing the drawer front, I used my router and a straight cut bit to remove some of the jagged broken edge in order for me to add the missing wood piece. One of the legs on each nightstand had a couple of notches missing from where they were attached together. I used what I had left of my Gorilla epoxy putty and filled them in. After using it all up, I had to run to the store and get some more, but all they had was quick wood, and you guys know I'm no longer a fan of them, but I decided to give it a shot anyway since I was running low on time. I came back 5 hours later and began sanding, only to realize that once again the quickwood did not in fact cure. It crumbled as I tried to sand it, and this isn't the first time that this has happened to me, so from now on I promise myself I will no longer take the chance. I have not once ran into this issue with the Gorilla brand, but apparently Home Depot no longer carries it in stores, so I had to overnight it from Amazon. I took the old back, measured and traced out the shape of a new one. After cutting it out with my jigsaw and sanding it smooth, I adhered it with some wood glue and brad nails. I used 3/4 inch oak plywood I had left over from a previous project. You could use some edge banding, but I just used wood filler to smooth out the raw edges of the plywood. I cleaned the old dirty casters with some Barkeeper's Friend and set them aside to dry. To prime, I am using 2 coats of bench shellac based primer and applying it with a foam roller. For the smaller, harder to reach areas, I just used a small cheap brush. The paint that I used was bare decorative chalk paint that you can find at any local Home Depot in the color Wheat Bread. This is the same color I used on the board and batten wall I did in my restroom renovation. I'll have that video linked in the description if you haven't watched it yet and you're interested. I did a total of 3 coats and sanded in between with a 320 grit sanding sponge. I moved on to staining the tops with the color Early American and sealed everything off with my Verite Natural finishing wax. I drilled holes for the new hardware and applied feed-in wax to the drawers. Now let's take a moment to remember what this desk used to look like and what the nightstands look like now. Overall, I spent about $110 on everything and about 10 hours of work. I don't think this will sell for much in my area, but I'm still content with what I created with the mess that I started with. I hope you enjoyed the video and learned a thing or two. I love y'all, be kind, and I'll see y'all next week. Bye!